All right, the wait is almost over. We have another 24 hours, and then it will be hockey for the Avalanche and the Kings. Why not do a crossover episode? It's Locked On Avalanche, Locked On Kings. New hockey season is just about here.
Your Locked On Avalanche, your daily podcast on the Colorado Avalanche. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, everybody, the season is knocking on the door for our teams anyway. If you're listening to this on the day it's released on Tuesday, hockey season is officially back. So welcome to a special crossover between Locked On Avalanche and Locked On Kings. I am Chris Micieli. With me, as always, is my co-host, Mr. Shaggy Von Doom, Kyle Sullivan. We're from Locked On Avalanche and from Locked On Kings. We did this not that long ago, Eddie Garcia from Locked On Kings. How are we feeling, boys? Hockey season finally back.
It's the most wonderful time of the year.
Yes.
Yeah. October is a hell of a month for sports, guys.
Isn't it?
There's so much going on with football and baseball playoffs and now hockey starting. If you're a sports fan, man, it's a great month.
It's a great month. Unless you're a Broncos fan right now, which I am. Pretty much you can cross one of those sports off that list. It's I get to put full-time effort into hockey right now, so that's fantastic. So thank you everybody for tuning in and making this your first listen of the day. That is always appreciated. A lot to get to, so why don't we dive right in? We will get into kind of like the players to watch. If you're watching on YouTube, you can see kind of our rundown, the keys for each team. But I thought we probably should start with kind of like a bird's eye view of how things are going right now. Like these are two teams that are really expected to make some waves this year, right? Like both are expected to have a ticket punch to the playoffs, and both are kind of expected to make some go far into the playoffs. That's the expectation for both of these teams. But let's rewind the tape right now, not look at the end, and look at right now. How do things stand for the Kings going into game one? Eddie, are they healthy? Are they ready to go? Any question marks for them right now?
Actually, unfortunately, the answer is yes. Now, they are healthy. However, one of their key players, their third line right winger, Arthur Kaliev, was suspended for 4 games for a knee-on-knee hit he had against the Ducks. And I don't know about you guys, but 4-game suspensions in the NHL are incredibly rare. And I know that Kings fans have said, well, it's really a 2-game suspension because it's 2 regular season games.
Right.
But my experience has been when the NHL has suspended players for preseason games, they have not carried over usually into the regular season. And the NHL loves handing out those 2-game suspensions. So I was really surprised. I'm not saying he didn't deserve to be suspended. He absolutely did. He caused an injury, and it was malicious. But 4 games is still not what the NHL normally does. Now, that has put the Kings in a very interesting position because they're already up against the salary cap. So their roster is very fluid right now. They've been putting guys on waivers, recalling players. And right now, it looks like if they go by what they did in their preseason finale against Vegas, they're going with an 11-7 setup with 11 forwards and 7 defensemen. So you see this occasionally in the NHL. I know Vegas has done this in the past because of some salary cap issues. Edmonton has done this a little bit. They did it against the Kings, actually in the playoffs a few times. So because of the Kaliev suspension, obviously his salary is still on the books, right? So and they can't really call up anybody to replace him. So they're being very, I guess they're kind of playing with things right now to see how it goes. And they're also, they've got 3 goalies on the roster right now.
I saw that.
Yeah, and none of them have been horrible and none of them have been great in the preseason. And I think if people have been following what's going on in Tampa Bay, I think they're looking for a goalie on the waiver wire who has NHL experience. I think the Kings think that whoever they send down is not going to clear. So that could play a factor as well. So there's a lot of stuff going on with the Kings roster. But they are healthy. They just look like, again, it looks like they're going with 11 forwards, 7 7D, and then obviously only 2 goalies, but they'll still have another goalie on their roster. So if an injury happens in the game for the Kings, they're going to be really shorthanded. So that's something to keep an eye on. Hopefully it doesn't happen from a Kings standpoint, but that is something to keep an eye on.
Okay. Now, and that suspension, like this is his first suspension, is it not?
Yes, he does not have a history.
That's crazy to me.
I agree.
I can't figure it out. I mean, why should I be surprised? Like, we all know Department of Player Safety. Like, everybody talks about the wheel that's they spin.
The wheel of justice.
It's not that far off from how
it
they
really
probably
isn't.
I don't get it.
The nature of the injury that you referenced, is it egregious enough that we could point back to this throughout the season as the benchmark, the tone setter, all the way back in preseason, that we could expect this all the way through? Like, I don't understand a player with no history. Yes, an injury is caused, but I mean, we've had suspect hits throughout the years on both sides. Never even come close to this, and often just kind of forgotten about. Why is this happening now? And is this what we could expect all year long? And do you think this affects the NHL as a whole because of this one suspension being so large?
I think it's a great question, and I don't have an answer for it because, as we know, the NHL is wildly inconsistent.
Right.
Last year, Matthew Tkachuk put his stick intentionally into the mask of Jonathan Quick. Could have easily caused an incredibly serious injury. It was done on purpose. He got a 2-game suspension. He's a guy who's got a history. He's been suspended and fined before. So how this, and again, the player for the Ducks was injured. He's going to be out, I believe, 8 weeks with a knee injury. So it's a serious offense. I get that. Are they, from what I know, they haven't sent out any kind of directive from the Department of Player Safety saying, here's the standard for this season. If they said that, I'd be okay with it. At least I would know, and everybody else in the league would know, that they're setting a new standard and they're going to be tough on crime, but they haven't said that. So I'm very curious to see what the next suspension is going to be. I have zero confidence that this is a new standard. I really don't. If that happens, okay, but I would be shocked if that happened. So I have no answer for why he got a guy with no history, got a 4-game suspension. And I'm not trying to be a crybaby about it. Like I said, he deserved it. He caused an injury, absolutely needed to be suspended. But last year there were 25 suspensions in the NHL. 20 of them were 2 or less games. Wow. None of them were 4, by the way. The other ones were 3 games. So we'll see.
Wow. We're already off to a great start with DOPS. So, Kyle, what do you think for the Avs? Like, kind of same question. And injuries obviously are in their history, especially last year. How do you feel like, right now going into this game, how do you feel the Avs are health-wise? They don't have any suspensions on the docket, so that's good. But there were some questions of their lineup. We got some answers, but there's still one hanging out there with Andrew Cogliano. We don't know if he's going to be starting this game on Wednesday, and that does make a big difference on that fourth line.
And since this is a crossover episode, we're also speaking to fans of the Kings. Gabriel Landeskog is still injured for the Colorado Avalanche. That's something that you have to understand. So that is an injury that Avalanche fans have kind of just come to accept. But he wasn't there last year. He's not going to be here this year. No suspensions for Valeri Nichushkin because of his exit in Seattle. So you're coming into this season fresh. The Cogliano game time decision. We're in Avalanche preseason, like regular season form now, with you don't know who's going to be on the roster. But with the off-season acquisitions of like Miles Wood, Ross Colton, Ryan Johansson, the team is beefier and deeper. Like Chris, we're talking about who's going to comprise this fourth line. Like this Avalanche team is so deep now, they have like a top 9. Usually you talk about top 6s and who's going to slot in that 2C. We're talking about 3C as an understood and probably one of the best third lines in the NHL. Close, and we're talking about fourth lines. This Avalanche team, they're angry. And they were embarrassed last year.
Oh, you're buzzing, Kyle. All right. Sorry, we had some technical difficulties. But what Kyle was saying is true. Like for the Avalanche, like heading into the first game, to have only Andrew Cogliano be the question mark is already a plus. You're already good if you're the Avs. Because last year going into game 1, you were down some guys. And then in that first week, more guys were injured, or didn't Nathan McKinnon have COVID or something to start the season last year? And Devon Taves had an injury. Like it was just, as soon as the season started, right up to the end, it was just, they were fighting the injury bug. So to have just Andrew Cogliano be the question mark And I would say I'm pretty confident now that he will start. So let's just say he does, and you're pretty healthy going into the season. That's really where you want to be if the Avs at least to start the season. So, you know, they're going to be at puck drop pretty much fully healthy. You know, their backup goalie, Pavel Francouz. That's the one who's really not going to be there. Other than that, I think it's looking pretty good for the Avs. So let's get into kind of like what's new for each team, like kind of the moves they made in the offseason and how things stand for each one of those teams. We'll do that next. But first, we're going to talk about a Gametime, and you shouldn't have to worry when you're buying tickets to your next big event. Gametime is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all these sports, music, comedy, and theater events near you with killer last-minute deals, all-in pricing, views from your seat, and the best price guarantee. Gametime takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. And what are some of the things that we love about the Gametime app? It's those last minute tickets, flash deals, and zone deals. Easy to find and buy tickets for every kind of event in your area. Views from all seats in the venue, and it's the lowest price guarantee with event cancellation protection and even job loss protection. So download the Gametime app, create an account, use the promo code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Once again, create an account, redeem the code LOCKEDONNHL. That's LOCKEDON NHL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, the lowest price guaranteed. All right, like any other team, a lot of moves are made in the off season, and now we get to see. I mean, you saw, I'm sure, same thing for the Kings with the. You saw some of that in the preseason. Now it counts. So we talked a little bit about this in the crossover we did a little over a month ago, Eddie. But what are those moves? Those big moves? Revisit those for us Avalanche fans, and how have they looked in the preseason? And what are we expecting from those new moves going into the regular season?
Well, let's touch on something I already brought up, and that's goaltending. Like I said, the Kings currently have 3 goalies on their roster. That could change before puck drops. We'll see. But 2 of them are new, and that would be Cam Talbot and David Riddick. A couple of veteran guys, been around the leagues, been there, done that to varying degrees of success. And then they have the holdover, last year's rags to riches story, Phoenix Copley, who came out of nowhere, career AHL guy, and suddenly he's 3rd in the NHL in winning percentage. So don't know who it's going to be. They've all been up and down in the preseason. One good start, one bad start for Talbot and Copley, and for Rittich, he had one good start and then some spot duty here and there. So I don't know if maybe they know, but I'm not totally confident who is going to be in net for this first game. Wow. Could it be the guy last season who did it so well? Could it be the newcomer who I think the Kings ultimately went out and got, thinking that, talking about Cam Talbot 2 years ago, had a great season in Minnesota, not so good last year, did have some injury issues, ready for him to bounce back? Or the guy who looked the best in preseason? Probably not, but we'll see. So 2 new goalies. We'll see if we see one of them against the Avalanche or not. I think it's going to be Cam Talbot, but we'll see. He did not have a great final preseason game against Vegas. The big offseason acquisition we talked about in our earlier crossover, Pierre-Luc Dubois coming over in the huge trade, probably the second biggest trade of the offseason, second to Erik Karlsson going to Pittsburgh. He's looked fantastic in the preseason, centering the 3rd line. I thought he would center the 2nd line, but he's centering the 3rd line. Either way, the Kings are super deep down the middle with Andrei Kopitar, Philip Deneau, and now Pierre-Luc Dubois. It's my first real chance to get a good look at him. Big body, shields the puck really well. He's fluid, but skilled for a big guy who's got a long reach. Sometimes he looks like he's not going full speed, and I know that that's been kind of a criticism of him. I think it's more just his style of play, to be honest with you. He's kind of a long strider and floats a little bit, but when he gets the puck on his stick, he can really make things happen. So I think the Kings fans are really excited to see what he can do in his first year with the Kings, and now he's signed to a long-term deal, so first of many seasons with the LA Kings. And I think lastly for the Kings, as far as what's new, they have a new 3rd pairing on defense. Right now, we talked about carrying 7 defensemen. So the 2 guys on the left side that we're battling out are still on the roster as of now. That's Tobias Bjornfoot and Andreas Engeland. And on the right side is a young kid named Jordan Spence. I know you have some history with England, right?
We do.
Yeah. On the right side is a kid named Jordan Spence, and he, for the moment, has unseated Brant Clark, the young golden boy who's going to be the next big thing. He's starting the year in the AHL. Now, that part of that is because of what we said, the fluidity with the roster. Clark's waiver exempt, so he can go up and down, right? Some of the other guys can't. Bjornfoot can't. Andreas England can't. So that's part of the problem as well. But Jordan Spence, really good young player, has paid his dues, waited his time, and he's going to be running the Kings' second power play unit. He's basically replacing Sean Dursey for the Kings, who was traded to Arizona in the offseason to make room to sign Pierre-Luc Dubois. So good young player. He's a couple years ago, because of injuries, he did get a decent amount of time in the NHL. So I don't think he's going to be overwhelmed by the situation at all, but a really good young player on the right side on the third pairing for the LA Kings.
What's up with Byfield?
Byfield starting on the top line with Andre Kopitar and Adrian Kempe. Okay. Still, he's doing good things, but he's not putting the numbers up, which is what Kings fans want to see. But he has made that top line better, which is kind of the most important thing, big picture wise. I still think there's time with him to develop into somebody who's going to get better numbers. But for now, I think he's looked bigger and stronger in the preseason on his skates. There was a time where he kind of go flying around and wouldn't be unusual to see him hit the ice. But he just looks more sturdy, bigger, stronger on his feet. And he flies around. He really does hustle a lot. So another year under his belt. I don't think he's going to put up any kind of big numbers this year, but playing on that top line, he's going to get a lot of big minutes, and I think he can be an asset.
So what? And forgive me, but yeah. Why on the top line then? If he's not producing kind of, you want your top line to produce points, right? That's your top line. That's your go-to line. I love Quentin Byfield. I liked him coming out. I wish nothing for the best for him, and I want to see him succeed. And you're kind of saying, like, yeah, he's getting there. Is that what this team wants right now? I could see if you were kind of like in rebuild, well, not semi-rebuild mode, like improving mode, putting him on the top line, learning, going through the breaks. Is that where they want him to be right now, or just they're expecting him to be improved and we're going to put him on the top line?
Well, they out of nowhere, I'd love to know who came up with this idea, because he's a natural center and they drafted him to be a center. They, the thinking was he's the heir apparent to Andre Kopitar. Well, now with Pierre-Luc Dubois, that's not going to be the case, but he could be at some point the number 2 center. But they did something like they did with Gabe Velarde that helped turn him around, who's now left to go to Winnipeg. But they put him on the wing and it got him sparked. And so somebody decided to try this with Quentin Byfield, and they put him with Adrian Kempe and Andre Kopitar on the top line, and that line took off after that. Now, he wasn't putting up the numbers, but Kopitar and specifically Adrian Kempe were. So the best hockey of the season last year for the Kings top line was with Quentin Byfield on the line. Okay. Now, people are like, did they do it in spite of him, or did they do it because of him? Well, I'm not sure. All we know is it was better when he was there. Okay. So he's going to get that chance again to try it to start the season.
If it works, don't ask questions.
That's right. All that matters is if it works.
Exactly. Kyle, for the Avs, why don't you kind of revisit our moves and if any of those moves are surprising for how the opening night roster kind of is constructed right now and how it's looking for this opening day against the Kings.
I mean, we've made the joke a couple of times. This almost looks like a fantasy hockey team. Like, you have Ryan Johansson, you have Miles Wood, you have Tomas Tatar, you have Ross Colton.
Sing the praises of Miles Wood right now, but for this team, I think he's good. He's perfect for this.
These are notable names and where they've come from, and they have, like, this is not just a Nicolas Aube-Kubel pickup that the Avalanche have made, or like a Pierre-Edouard Bellemare move. Like, these are notable names that are missed at the fan bases they left to come to the Avalanche, because they want to come to the Avalanche to win. So this opening night roster is immediately beefier than last year. Last year, we were talking about who's going to be the 2C. Is this going to be Alex Newhook taking over at 2C and ascending to the ranks in the Colorado Avalanche? He's in Montreal. Like, this team is completely different, built different from the ground up. You have that top line of Nathan McKinnon, Mikko Rantanen, and Jonathan Drouin is up there. There's another name.
Which I think that's a big surprise for some people. Maybe not. As soon as they got him, people were just throwing that out there. Like, oh, he's going to be reconnected with Nathan McKinnon. I was a little bit skeptical of that. And I thought it could have been something where, like, as the season goes on, if he's showing improvement. And last year was just an anomaly. He's fine with the assists. It's just the goal scoring that just doesn't seem to be coming for him, which it hasn't in the preseason either. And I don't want to harp too much on that, but it's just a fact. He had some really good looks in the preseason and couldn't come through on them. I think watching him play, it's kind of smart to just throw him into the fire with that top line, because I think he can play with those boys. It's no doubt that he can't do that. But at the beginning of the free agency period when they got him, I didn't think he was going to be on that top line. And I think he's kind of played himself there through preseason, and it was never kind of in doubt. It was kind of like, no, that's where he's going to be. And I think they're going to be better for it. I think you're going to see a really good season at a Jonathan Drouin this year, no doubt. So, what else you think, Kyle?
No, I'm just in love with the makeup of this team compared to last year, because they're committing to a grittier team. They got embarrassed and they addressed it. They didn't just keep committing to, we have Nathan McKinnon, that's all we need. They addressed the need, and this is what you want if you want to be a dynasty. They don't want to see other teams that are in the Western Conference, like the St. Louis Blues, go all the way up and then kind of fizzle out. With Cale Makar on the defense, and you have Nathan McKinnon and Mikko Rantanen on your top line, they're committed to this team, and to see them take another step forward, it's a lot of exciting things for this Avalanche team going into night one, and you want to see them continue this throughout the year. But night one, you could expect a lot of just heavy emphasis on that top line, and look out for that third line, that Colton, Tatar, and Wood line. There's a lot of hype coming out of that preseason for that line, and I would like to see what it looks like in real-time regular season NHL action.
And you mentioned Tatar, and that's a guy that, you alluded to, guys wanting to come to the Avalanche to play on a team that can compete for a cup. He's one of those guys. Like, that was a late signing, and a 1 year, $1.5 million to go get him only improves his team. I will say, like, a surprise, I think, is in the preseason, you had Riley Tufte looking really good, and he cleared waivers, so he's still with the team. But they told Curtis McDermott to focus on the forward position in the offseason. And if Cogliano is not able to play on Wednesday, Curtis McDermott is your fourth line winger. Just let that sink in, because Kyle and I are not fans of that, but it's one of those things where it's like, hey, in Bednar we trust. So we'll see where that goes. Let's get into players to watch and kind of key players and positions and what we're expecting from some of these guys for this game on Wednesday. And we're going to talk about that next. But first, we're going to talk about FanDuel, FanDuel.com. Snap into action this NFL season with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. And right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place just a $5 bet. And that's $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there is no better time to get in on the action. The app is secure, super easy to use, and there's a wide range of betting options, including spreads, player props, over-under. You can still bet on the Broncos for some reason if you wanted to. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to kick off this NFL season, which is already underway. But FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. All right, keys to this game, Eddie and Kyle. What are we thinking? Game number one. Sometimes they get off to slow starts, and you have that, just those first couple games or maybe a couple weeks for teams got to get into the flow of a season. What are we expecting game one, Eddie, from the Kings? Who are some key players that we got to watch out for?
Yeah, it's a little bit interesting you say that, because the Kings had a trip to Australia to play in the Global Series preseason game. So that kind of threw off their training camp a bit. And they didn't play in as many games, maybe. Some of the players, they gave them a little extra rest because of the trip to Australia, that kind of thing. So we'll see if it contributes to maybe a slow start or not. Something that Kyle talked about, I think, could be something to watch. Battle of the third lines. I talked about it. Pierre-Luc Dubois centering the third line with Kevin Fiala and a youngster in Alex Laferriere, who has been called up replacing Arthur Kaliev, who's suspended. He's a young guy who had a nice career at Harvard. He's opened some eyes this preseason. I'm a little surprised to see him being called up and getting this shot, but circumstances have shown on him for now, and it looks like he's going to be on that third line. So he looked pretty good. He looked really good in the preseason. So we'll see if he can carry that off when the bullets are flying for real. So I think battle of the third lines might be something to watch for sure. Obviously the goaltending, as I mentioned, is going to be something that's going to be in the spotlight for the Kings all season long. And I think probably the biggest thing for the Kings as far as a key is they don't have to win the special teams battle, but they can't lose it. Their penalty kill was 24th in the league last year. Obviously the Avs have a great power play. And we saw in the playoffs against Edmonton, although their power play is certainly otherworldly, that's probably why the Kings lost a series. So it's been emphasized. They've been practicing a lot. They've changed the philosophy, a lot more aggressive on entries and things like that. So the penalty kills, they've talked about it. It's going to be under the spotlight every game. So we've got to see some improvement from the Kings in that area. They're going to get a big first test, obviously, in this game against the Avs and what they can do on the power play. So if they can just have the special teams battle be even, I don't think they'll probably win it, but if it can be even, because the Kings did have a good power play last year too, I think that would go a long way in the Kings getting a win.
Were they a heavily penalized team last year?
No, not really. But the penalty kill just was very, very inconsistent.
Okay. All right. What do you think, Kyle? What's the kind of maybe some key? We talked about a lot of players. So I know that the third line is going to be fun to watch. I think it's so funny that, they have good top lines, but we're going to be watching the third line in this game. That's going to be where the action's at. But keys to the game for the Avs. What are you thinking?
For the Avs especially, it's an old habit that you saw creep up a little bit in the preseason. The last time the Avalanche were on national television, let's put together a 60-minute game. It's
Very
keep
true.
that momentum and tempo all the way through. I know it's preseason. You can kind of just shrug your shoulders and go on, but no, that's something from the past that you need to correct. And
has it been slow starts or fast starts and not sustaining it?
It's usually the end of the game. If this is a 3-1 game, even a 4-1 game in the third, it is not over, Eddie. Okay. Don't shut the game off. Kyle's 100% right. The Avs have struggled in that area to really just put their, I don't want to be too graphic. Hey, it's Halloween. I would say put the skate on the throat of a player, but they struggle to do it.
And it's one of those, they get the lead and they look at all the jerseys in front of them and they kind of rest and they kind of, take their foot off the gas a little bit. And that's usually when you anger the other team and they come roaring back and it becomes a lot closer than it should be. So especially you're back on national television, you need to keep going all game long. And honestly, the other key to this game, proof of concept, you need to get out and strike first. You don't need to put this team together and tout these incredible moves by this front office and then immediately go down. You need to get out there and you need to strike first and you need to hold it the whole game long.
Yeah. For me, I don't know why. I mean, it just goes back to when I was a kid. No matter the sport, I always feel like opening night, wherever it is, it's like home court, home field, home ice is a big advantage. I feel like in that first game of the season, and Kings fans show up, so that arena is going to be just wild. So you got to calm that fan base down as quickly as possible, and that's where that first goal comes into play, and that's key, right? But then you got to like Kyle's saying, keep the pressure on them. So we'll see where it goes. I think, the goalie situation for the Avs was good last year. You want to see that continue this year with Alexander Georgiev. So, even we haven't even mentioned, the big names for the we haven't really mentioned Cale Makar and really Nathan McKinnon or Mikko Rantanen. Makar only played one preseason game, and you could tell he was not going because he is nursing an injury that they've always said since the preseason started, should be fine. He should get a preseason game in and he should be fine for the opener. That's held true, but you could tell in that preseason game, he was going nowhere near 100%. So is that just precautionary? Is that he's still overcoming this, whatever it is? Doesn't seem like anybody's really concerned about it, but he hasn't had like those practices or that game where he is going full bore, where McKinnon is. Like, he was bowling China shop, in the games that he was playing. So I don't know, like that's where that whole kind of just getting into the flow of things comes into play here. How much will that play a factor? Usually it doesn't matter. Usually it's just you got to get a couple shifts in, maybe a period, and then you're back to game flow. But it could be a little bit different because we haven't seen a lot of these guys yet. So, it's only game one. If the Avs take a loss, it's not obviously the end of the world, but you want to get off to a good start. Winning in someone else's barn is the best way to do that. What are we doing predictions here? Do you want to throw out predictions, Eddie, or are you
whatever you guys want? Whatever you guys want, I'm fine.
Go ahead. Why don't we finish up with that? We'll finish up with what do we think the final score is going to be here for game one against the Avs and Kings? What are you thinking, Eddie?
Boy, this is a tough test for the Kings to start off. It really is. I think because of the goaltending situation and it being a little bit up in the air right now, it makes me very uneasy. I do think they're two very good teams, but I just don't know what to expect from the goaltending, honestly. So, I'll say this. I think the Avalanche are a favorite in this game. I wouldn't be shocked if they were to skate off with a victory. I think it'll be a close game. I think it might be a little bit more higher scoring than not. So hopefully my fellow Kings fans won't be upset with me, but I'll say 4-3 Avalanche.
All right. Yeah. I mean, so the last game that the Avs played in the preseason, like, they looked great. Like, and that was kind of almost like their dress rehearsal, right? Like, most of those starters were out there and they looked good for close to 2 periods. And then here we go. Like, things kind of fell apart in the third. I don't know if some of that was just because it's the preseason and, they just kind of took their foot off the gas a little bit. If they had played a full 60, and that's so weird saying this, if they played a full 60 in a preseason game, I'd feel so confident right now going into this game, because that team that we saw is pretty much going to be the team that's out there against the Kings. If they can do what they did in those first 33 minutes in that game, things are looking good for the Avs. But you're right, Eddie. Like, this could go either way. Like, I want to see. When's the next time these two teams play? Do we know? That's obviously later in the season. I don't know when it is, but I look forward to that one, because maybe there'll be a little bit, tons of games under their belt. I kind of agree with you. I think this could be a 4-3 game. But I'm not like super confident in that right now. So that's where I'm at. What do you think, Kyle?
It's funny that Eddie said 4-3. I was thinking it's going to be a 5-3 game, and it's going to go 5-3 with an empty netter. They're going to pull the goalie, and that empty net goal is going to be Jonathan Drouin, and we're going to have an interesting time talking about Drouin's first Avalanche goal.
That's big, man. Like, he's got to get off to a good start, because the longer he goes without getting that first goal, the question is going to keep creeping up for him. So we'll see where it goes. All right, let's get this show on the road. Eddie, why don't you throw out there where people can follow you out there in the social media world?
If they want to follow me personally on Twitter or X or whatever we're calling it these days, it's the site formerly known as Twitter, at Eddie on Fox, EDDIE on Fox, and they want to follow the show. It's obviously at Locked On LA Kings.
And you can follow our show, LOPN_Avalanche, on that Twitter X thing.
Mm-hmm.
Same on Instagram and all the other. So we're on Blue Sky too, believe it or not. That's kind of a fun one. If you want to go find, if you're locked up with Blue Sky, follow us over there as well. And of course our YouTube channel. And Kyle, where people follow you? You got your own page.
At Shaggy Von Doom everywhere you
love
look.
it. Love it. All right, everybody. Thank you for tuning in and making this your first listen of the day. Enjoy the game. Enjoy the season. We don't have to wait anymore. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you guys tomorrow.